John Vest is the Extension Agent for Floyd County with the Virginia Cooperative Extension. His expertise helps novice and experienced farmers produce quality livestock and crops throughout our region. John has offered to share his experiences with our audience and provide them with the knowledge to keep agriculture strong. This is the Ag Show with John Vest.
Well, welcome back, folks. We have with us today, we're located over at the Woods property. Some very nice neighbors considered enough to let us come prune and demonstrate on some of their apple trees that they inherited as new property owners. And I've got a tree behind us that is not something uncommon with regards to what we would find in many home landscapes, or particularly if you purchase property and has had some apples and fruit trees planted on that property. We oftentimes find these have been unpruned and not taken very good care of, at least during the transition process. So I've got a tree behind me that has several things for us to look at from a pruning perspective that will really help you do a better job when it comes to pruning your apples and pears for next year. Behind me, this is an apple tree, and I've got some flags actually tied up throughout the tree for us to look at more closely. And each one of these flags is actually in the tree for a reason. It's helping me identify those areas that I'd like to prune first. Sometimes when we look at the job as a whole, it looks very daunting and that there's maybe more than we wish to tackle, but that's not usually the case. If we can get in and remove some of our problem areas first, it will reduce the overall amount of work, hopefully, as we progress toward our finished product. Looking right here behind me on this limb, the reason I have it taped off is this is an important situation that many of us end up dealing with when pruning has not necessarily been done properly in the past. As you can see, there's nearly a 2-inch stub that has been allowed to remain in the tree. And if we allow that stub to remain, typically what will happen as it dries out and begins to rot down into the stem, it will compromise not only the area here, but it'll die back down beyond some of your new growth. And consequently, those new areas will also start to have problems as well. If we take this limb here and we make a pruning cut just above a branch in the direction we'd like it to grow, I'm going to cut that stub out just to demonstrate. And fortunately, we are just now starting to see the dieback that was occurring on this end actually just starting to reach that portion of the tree where it would be growing back into that branch. Once again, once that starts to get to that point, we would be sacrificing those branches around it with regards to its overall health of the entire branch. Now, once again, when it comes to tree fruit in general, there's a few quick things to look at with this branch, and that is direction of its growth. In many cases, we want to prune out that material that grows back in toward the interior portion of the tree, or that would be growing straight up in the interior of the tree. And this branch here does have this shoot that's growing back across other branches. So I'm going to take that branch out. I'm actually going to take the end out right here, just above this shoot. Now I have a branch that has nice directional branching moving back out toward the outside edge of the tree. Moving on down, we have another branch just below us here, and I've chosen this one because for a couple reasons. There's a lot of weight starting to be distributed over this entire branch. Ideally, if the tree had been seeing regular pruning, we would have additional lateral branches coming out, and I wouldn't have this great deal of weight out at the very end. So I'm looking to reduce this branch to some degree, as well as the reason it was chosen was for the amount of damage that this tree sustained just a year or so ago during the periodic cicada emergence. And what I have there is damage to the outside shoots that really need to come off. So I'm going to come up here, choose a branch growing to the outside of the tree that I would like it to grow in the direction of. I'm 1/4 inch to 1/8 of an inch above that shoot, and I'm just going to take right through with my cut and reduce that branch and the weight of this branch off of the tree. Now, we're not done just yet, but I did want to demonstrate or show to you the damage I'm talking about. Right here, this is all cicada or insect injury and why they're so damaging to our tree fruit. This particular insect usually tries to lay the eggs or ovideposit her eggs in about 5 to 7 slits, and they do so usually when the tree is about the size of a number 2 pencil. If the life cycle of the insect had continued properly, during an ice or snow load, these areas are weakened in the tree. And you'll see right here how easy it snaps or tends to snap in that exact damaged area. And this would fall to the ground, eggs would hatch out, they would move back down in the soil, and it would start that whole cicada cycle again 13, 17 years later, depending on your brood. Still a lot of energy here on this tree, or weight here on this branch, that needs to be dealt with. One thing to look for, when I have apple branches that are growing directly under the main or parent branch, it's always, in many cases, a good idea to remove those areas. Those branches tend to be shaded, add additional weight, and the apple production oftentimes is not nearly as productive on that undergrowth as it would be on your main stem, where we're trying to build girth and strength. All right, we continue to make our way around this apple tree. We've made it to the far side now, and the cameras have had a chance to be repositioned. One of the things we talk about are all those unwanted limbs that are growing on the interior of the tree, usually straight up or back in toward the trunk. So as you see right here in front of me on this lower branch, I'm going to make some room for myself, largely for the camera, so we can address what's above me. But for right now, we have 2 what we call water sprouts. The shoots that occur on the interior portion of the tree that do exactly that, and they're vigorous, they grow up several feet within a given season. While they're wonderful for scion wood and collecting for grafting purposes, those are the types of shoots that we would take out. So I'm going to remove 1 and 2 right here. Now people might ask, well, why aren't you removing that shoot there? Once again, it's directional. It's moving toward the outside of the tree. And if I manage not to break it off before I'm done up here and above, we'll be doing just fine. The reason the tag is up here, the reason we've once again marked this tree or this particular branch, is because there's a number of rubbing, crossing branches that are starting to really work as they build in girth. They're going to work against each other and create wound wood right on through those summer months when disease can follow. So right here on this branch that I've noted with the tape, I'm going to come in, and right there at my branch collar, I'm going to cut or make my cut right there. You can see up above toward the camera, it's actually been rubbing on the branch that's heading out in that direction. So having made my cut, I can remove that out of there. I'll drop it down. We'll look for any other branches that are really growing in the wrong direction. I think this one right here that was just beside it is also very directional back toward existing branching. So I'm going to take it out as well. That being said, now I start to work once again Once we remove our problem branches, we continue outward along the lines of where our developing wood is going to be occurring. We see right off the bat the next branch out, this one right here, I mean, it is flat rubbing the branch right above it. And I have to make a decision. What's more important? Do I want to save this branch in the direction it's growing, or do I want to save this branch that's growing out toward your camera? In this particular case, I'm going to actually take out, I believe I'm going to end up taking out this branch here. This first branch is compromising this entire limb and its outward development. Whereas this one, if I remove it, I'm still haven't created a lot of opening for myself. So I'm going to come in here, and it might be to that point where loppers are the better choice, but the trusty Felcos get her done. Now I take that branch off, removing it down. Now we can start to see I've got this branch has its open and general developmental space. This one is still kind of growing out towards that direction. I'm actually going to fix that, and by making the cut where I did, growing out in the direction of the rest of the branch, now this branch will continue growing out in its given space and provide additional years of production off this one nice wide area. There are a couple more things I want to address. Once again, just like my previous branch that we took off a few moments ago, this one has some cicada damage out toward the end. So I'm going to remove some of its weight. I'm going to come back to a weaker branch and make a cut. I'm actually take that one off the bottom. And once again, branches that are growing off the bottom of another branch are usually less productive, so it's going to come off. Branches that grow straight up, like you can see here and here, are not productive, or they can be productive, but they add too much weight to the tree. I'm going to take that one off right there. And once again, working my way out this tree here, out this limb here, I can see that this upper branch is starting to cross with the one above my head. I'm making a decision right now to change its life and send it in the direction that I want it to grow. So I'm going to choose to take a bottom off, and the direction that it was coming out here becoming a rubbing issue. And now this branch is no longer rubbing, and it is directed in the direction we like to have it grow in. All right, folks, you didn't get the opportunity to watch me climb 7 or 8 feet up into this tree, but I'm doing so on this is actually an orchard ladder. I don't know if we've caught it in the other pictures or description, but it has a single leg, that's allowed to be, or can be draped between the limbs, allowing me closer access into the interior portions of the tree as well as the outside of the tree. Anytime you're using ladders in the trees, it should be, foremost on your mind is your safety. Make sure you have a good base and something proper to work with. That being said, I've moved up into the top of this tree because this becomes a common question amongst many folks that contact the extension office. Is the tree now, after many years, has outgrown or seems to have wanted to reach its mature size. This young tree here, I really don't think is at its mature size yet. It probably wants to be 22 or 23 feet tall. That said, I'm well up within the tree's canopy, and there's a couple things we're going to do to address bringing its canopy down slightly so that the homeowners can enjoy picking fruit at lower levels, and at the same time, for the general health of the tree, having the ability to get back up and re-access the upper portion of the tree and prune properly from here on out. Now, there is some argument as to what level of pruning is necessary for the health of the tree. all trees would love to be their mature height. And any pruning that I use to bring one down, if left to the point where my circumference or my diameter of my limbs are large, that's a very unhealthy pruning cut to make. However, while limbs are still relatively small, and I have the ability to bring down the overall height while their limbs are still relatively young in size, I'm making a much smaller pruning wound, and I can reduce some of the height while leaving the energy and the vigor behind in some smaller, weaker limbs, and that will slow the overall speed in which this tree tries to regain its height once again. If we look right here, this shoot beside me is once again easily 12 feet off the ground, certainly by the time you reach the top, and would continue to grow so. We can see last year's season's growth has put on another 3 feet easily onto the top, which would continue to send this tree right up toward the clouds. What I'm proposing and what I've suggested to our homeowners, I appreciate their willingness to let me prune for the demonstration purposes, is I'm going to come to a lower crotch angle here within the tree and make a cut that's going to remove a lot of this upward growth. I'm coming back and making my cut just above some smaller branches, so as that cut and that wound begins to heal, the energy is diverted into those smaller branches. Those branches are going to be once again directed in the direction that I want them to grow in, not necessarily the tree. I'm going to start looking for that nice area down below where I have some shoots that could take this tree's, take the place of its upward desire or directional of growth. I'm going to choose this area right here. Once again, I'm working maybe just a little over an inch, so its removal does not create an overly large damaged area, and it's to two smaller limbs on either side that I'll be able to direct that energy into, and that way the tree doesn't put up a lot of prolific straight up growth, just like what we have right here. So I'm going to get in here with my loppers. Once again, right tool, right place. Loppers are designed for that inch size material. And right out of the bat, I've taken this tree down at least 3 to 4 feet in its overall height. I'm not done. That pruning cut right there, it's important for it to heal, and it will. But now I've got to make a decision or make some decisions on these branches that I have before me. I'd like to divert this tree's growth at this point to something more lateral so that the homeowners can eventually pick and access apples at this lower height. So I'm going to come in here and remove some upper portions, like what I've done right there, and drop down out of the way. We can see that I've left a branch. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 shoots, all smaller in size, but equally desirable as far as putting their energy into themselves to grow, once again, laterally and out herringbone, kind of out from even right there. I'm going to make that same cut right over here, taking that out, and let's get that out of the way of the camera. What you can see now is I have got all the energy of this trunk, or this lateral, or this codominant leader in this tree is making its way up. It's not being just abruptly cut through like the topping process. It's having its energy at this point diverted into 2 directions with smaller limbs that will have an opportunity to shape the direction of this tree for seasons to come. I'm not quite done while I'm up here. I will point out we've got stobs in the tree. They need to be removed before I climb down. This is an example, once again, of an excellent piece of scion wood. We mentioned once again before, the correct name for this is the water sprout in the tree. Those that sprout from the tree itself, from up in the trunk, are all water sprouts, and the ones that sprout from the ground or from the rootstock, those are suckers. We don't wish to leave any suckers. However, if I had decided that this wasn't on the interior portion of the tree, I may have chosen to leave this as a limb and simply placed a spreader inside it and bent that out to have the direction and the development in however I wish it to go. Unfortunately, that big shoot is growing right back into the interior of the tree. It's very strong with no lateral limbs, so right up on top, it's going to want to push again for this season. So it's coming off right there, and I'm going to get my loppers out. Once a stub has started to die or die back, it's very difficult for your smaller pruners to do the job. So I'd suggest a pair of loppers making their way in to prune off those areas where stobs were left behind. Got one more in there. Just like you have right there. I'm not quite done with this branch up here. I've got some questionable shoots over here to the camera's left, I guess, that I want to address as well. I've done such a good job of getting this size and down, it wouldn't do me any good at all to leave this material growing straight up, because it's going to push and regain what the size was over here very, very quickly. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take those strong upper shoots. In this particular case, since it was growing straight up to begin with, I'm going to take it off right there at its base. Just like that. And this one's growing back in toward the center of the tree, so it would come off right there. Let's see here. Just like that. All my energy is now directed back into shoots that are reasonable in size. I've got my energy up here. Let's take this shoot back about a third off the top of the top end of it. I'm doing that largely to encourage some buds that the camera can't pick out from your location, but I'm choosing some buds for that particular branch to develop from. Lastly, while you've got me in the top of this tree, and before I begin working on this side, I want to point out, out toward the end of my finger or towards the camera, you can see that piece of fruit that's remaining from last year's season. We call those examples mummies, and it's because they've literally dried up and died due to disease or insect or whatever may have occurred the previous season, and they are a giant ball of either fungal spores or bacterium that, with the first rainfall in the spring of the year, when it hits that area, will just blow spores all over, not just this tree, but the neighboring trees in this small block orchard. So in every case, when you get done with pruning season, those types of mummies or fruit that is hung from the previous season should absolutely be pruned out. Looking here, I got two rubbing branches. I'm actually going to take out this one that's growing back up. We'll drop it down. This is a branch, the example of a branch under a branch. I don't like that. It's usually poor in the development, contributes to poor development of the fruit. I'm going to take it off, leaving the energy to grow up into there. I'm going to reduce its overall length, or how the speed at which it grows out toward the camera for this season. And there we have the finished product with how to reduce this tree's height. And off camera, I'm going to finish with this other limb. Viewers, we've come to that point also where some of the questions always relay back to whether height for the health of the tree, or whether we're pruning for height to better our ease and access to the crop that we're so diligently trying to grow. The fact of the matter is, those are pruning decisions that are usually made specific to the tree that we encounter. In many cases, from a production standpoint, we in every case will try to keep the height of the tree reduced somewhere within at least 3/4 of or less of its natural height. But that being said, all trees one day want to reach their mature height. With regards to the health of the tree, yes, we could always allow things to grow on up, and the failure to address those limbs that one day become out beyond our reach, or that we can no longer reach, could become problems for the tree. So we weigh those options with regards to what we think is best in that particular season. Once again, starting while the tree is young, while the wounds that we create can remain small, we'll do more to allow us to maintain that lower height for a longer period of time, and once again, enjoy our harvests from a ladder that is simply 8 to 10 feet tall versus having a 20-foot ladder up in that tree. Well, folks, we just finished up the apples over on the far side of the small block of trees that we have here, and as we see behind me, I've got a peach. And I just want to express to the viewers how it is important that we keep various trees and treat various trees differently, particularly when it comes to the pruning. Apples and pears, like we've just covered in this segment, are largely produced on 2-year-old or older wood, and in every case they're usually pruned to where we have somewhat of a central leader or at least a central system in the tree. As you can see, or may not see behind me just yet, this peach tree, when we get done pruning it in a future segment, you'll get to see that we maintain a much more wide and open canopy within the tree's system itself. This allows the most important thing, and that is sunlight, to reach stone fruit. Without the additional stone light penetrating the center of the tree and being able to ripen our fruit, we have real issues, particularly in our elevation and shortened season here in Floyd County, of getting those desirable peaches that we'd like to get, particularly if your elevation is above 1,800 feet. That being said, I will say that there is no reason, particularly with today's varieties and the availability of those peaches that will tolerate our cold and our winter situations, that you can't choose a peach tree for Floyd County. It's absolutely a worthwhile prospect, and we'll discuss those pruning differences and the general physiology of the difference in those trees in future segments for you to enjoy.